So I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. Number one, I forgot to share that our Wi-Fi is fast, all capitals 2018, all one word. To let you know, the session the session with Mary Louise Bertram and Kate Ahern in the other room is not happening this morning because Kate Ahern was not able to join us. So those folks are going to come into this room for that session, which I hope to get started at 10:15. And finally, the session in the other room that Kate Ahern was going to deliver, instead Mary Louise is going to speak at 12:45 about AAC and Angelman syndrome, what we have learned works. So we're going to give the other folks a chance to come in. You guys can take a breather and a stretch, and we'll try to get started at 10:15 with Jane Farrell.
Yeah, I think I know why it keeps going to sleep. We could change the settings.
So good morning, I'm Sharon Weil-Chalker from the Foundation for Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics. So I am thrilled to continue with our 2018 Gala Educational Summit. I think we've had folks from the other room join us. I'm going to be introducing our next speaker, who is Jane Farrall. She's going to be speaking on literacy, language and literacy hand in hand. So I met Jane Farrall for the first time this morning. I have been a groupie for a number of years, and I was thrilled when she accepted my Facebook friend request, and I've wanted her to be here at the summit for several years, so I am really thrilled that she is here with us today. I actually have known about Jane for much longer than she's known about me, because several years ago, I got to meet Mary Louise Bertram thanks to people like Erin Sheldon and Tina Thompson. And I was lucky enough to have Mary Louise come and meet my son Ethan. My son Ethan is 16 and he has Angelman syndrome. And I think a lot of you have probably had this experience. Your kids probably love YouTube. And I wonder how well they navigate YouTube and whether you suddenly find them looking at things that interest them, or if you talk about something, you suddenly find that they are looking at something similar on YouTube and you have no idea how they navigated there. Well, after Ethan met Mary Louise, and she got her very own icon on his AAC system, so I got to hear Mary Louise all the time. He also fell in love with the Australian accent. And I would find that on YouTube that he had a knack for finding lots of AAC videos. And some of them were AAC users, but the vast majority of them were actually AAC educators. So he was looking at videos of people teaching people to use AAC. And if anybody knows a little more about Ethan, he's also a computer hacker. He also had videos of people programming AAC. This was what he liked to look at on YouTube. And then I would find that when I was fast asleep, because a lot of times he was on YouTube and I was trying to sleep, I would hear this lovely female Australian voice talking about AAC and literacy. And I messaged Mary Louise. I forgot to message Ethan, would also try to FaceTime Mary Louise without my permission. So I messaged Mary Louise and I said, Ethan is finding all these wonderful videos, and I keep waking up to your lovely voice teaching about literacy and AAC. And she said, well, that's not me. That must be Jane Farrall. So, of course, I looked, and it was, in fact, Jane Farrall that Ethan had found for himself on YouTube. So who is Jane Farrall? Now I go on to make it up. I did promise her that if she didn't get her bio in on time, that I would make something up, and she got her bio in on time. So I'm actually going to read it, if that's okay. Unless you're going, or are you going to introduce yourself?
I'll introduce myself.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay.
I will just make it up, though.
You'll make it up? That would probably be much more fun. All right, well, Jane Farrall is a speech pathologist and a special educator who is passionate about literacy and AAC and assistive technology. She has over 25 years of experience in the disability and assistive technology field and a lot of practical experience working with people with a range of abilities. She's worked at a school and as a school and adult service-based therapist and literacy teacher. She has also worked as an assistive technology specialist and is currently working as an independent consultant, Jane Farrall Consulting, by the way, running workshops and consulting with schools around Australia, implementing AAC and comprehensive literacy for all students. And that's what I wanted to get to, for all students, not just kids other than our kids who don't have Angelman syndrome, kids who are not as complex as our kids, all students. She has an extensive experience organizing camps, workshops, and conferences on AAC and literacy in AAC. She's the founder and coordinator of the Big Mouth Camp, a residential camp for children who use speech-generating devices, their families, and carers. She also runs regular multi-day professional development workshops around Australia and internationally. Just so you know, there are camps like that in the United States and Canada, kind of family camps for literacy, and I think she's one of the people who's done groundbreaking work in that to try to, and people have tried to brought that kind of model to the United States. So here's Jane.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Sharon said, I'm Jane, and I'm here to talk to you about literacy and language and AAC all together, all at once. Listening to the previous amazing quartet, I had lots of thoughts apart from just sitting there admiring them. One of the things, though, was a question that a gentleman asked at the end about how do we get this happening, and the response, I think, was from Corey about do one piece at a time. It may have been from Kelly. And I am going to talk to you about everything in emergent literacy today, but I strongly agree. Take one or two pieces back, put those in place, tell your team what amazing things they're doing today, and here's a suggestion for a change, and then keep going. That is the best way I've found to get change happening in those teams where we need to make, we need to make change, but too much change. You know yourself, it's just so overwhelming. So I'm going to talk about everything in emergent literacy today, and if you can think about one or two pieces of that to take home at a time, that would be fabulous. So, why are we even talking about language and literacy? I loved that, again, with the previous speakers, that their goal for their children being included was around communication and literacy. Every single individual in this world needs communication. And literacy is a separate and a same goal. Literacy comes hand in hand with communication and vice versa. When we read with young babies, we are developing their language, their literacy, and their communication all at the same time. This is a quote from our Australian curriculum, and surprisingly, most of you are not in Australia. But I put it in because I'm really proud of some of the statements we have. So we know that for all students, literacy is a really important focus. That literacy and language come together, and that language is critical for the development of literacy skills and vice versa. And we know that it is important for every single student in every single school to develop these skills. In the review for our release of our national curriculum, one of the things they found is that literacy is the biggest life skill. It is the thing that makes the most difference to students' post-school quality of life. Particularly in our current society where literacy is becoming more and more important every day, it's how we become socially included. How many of you have sent a text message this morning? Yeah. Has anyone not sent a Facebook status / textbook message / tweet this morning? Because we'd all like to know who you are. And so literacy is just becoming a really integral part of our everyday. So we're going to talk about emergent literacy this morning. And we're going to talk about how that feeds into and out of language development. So, emergent literacy as a phrase, I'll start by defining it. So emergent literacy is all the knowledge and skills and attitudes that begin to develop before conventional reading and writing. Marie Clay, who was a New Zealander, published her PhD in 1981, and she's the lady who invented reading recovery, which, as with all literacy techniques, goes through this cycle of popularity and lack of popularity, and I think it's on a downward cycle here at the moment. But reading recovery is an amazing program, and Marie Clay was the first person to talk about literacy emerging. And that was in 1981, and it's now well established that that is actually how we develop literacy. It's not a hierarchy of skills that we acquire. It emerges and blossoms from all of the experiences that we have with language and literacy as a preschooler. And so everything we learn about reading and writing, no matter what age we are, before we are actually reading and writing, is our emergent literacy knowledge. And the way that we demonstrate that is our emergent literacy skills, and how we feel about ourselves as emergent literacy learners are our attitudes. And all three of those are really important to encourage. So we need to develop emergent literacy knowledge because it leads to later literacy success. We need to develop skills in discrete areas such as alphabet knowledge to become successful later on. And we need to honestly believe that we are a shit-hot literacy learner to be a really good literacy learner. And that is what I want every student that I work with to know about themselves. So, children's first knowledge about words is actually acquired through the development of language skills. I think we would all agree with that. And what we know is that language development, and I should have oral in brackets because it's language development through AAC or through speech, is important to learning about printed words. We know that the more books that we read to our babies, the bigger their vocabulary becomes. We know that reading to babies helps develop their attention span. Reading to babies helps develop their understanding of how a conversation works. Because when we read to babies, it's not just about reading a book straight through, it's about having a conversation about the book. And so all of the time that we are reading to young children or to children of any age, individuals of any age who are emergent, we are putting language in so that we can get language out later on. We know that through literacy, we develop skills in different areas. So one of them is semantics. We learn how language works. We learn about syntax. We learn about phonology. And we learn about pragmatics, those social rules around communication. Shared reading got mentioned earlier. Shared reading we're going to talk about quite a bit. And it is actually about a conversational structure. And we are teaching individuals that we make a comment, we can ask a question, and we can respond. And we're teaching them some of those social rules that we call pragmatics around turn-taking and taking parts in a conversation. So literacy, language and communication feed into and out of each other in so many different ways. Okay, so emergent literacy. There are 6 different things that we know we need to do with every emergent reader and writer, no matter what age, and I have worked with 19-year-old emergent readers and writers who have become conventional readers and writers in their 20s. Whatever age they are, these are the 6 different things we need to do that lead to success later on. So I'm going to talk about each of these separately, and I'm going to start by talking about shared reading. Shared reading is the first emergent literacy activity that we do with emergent readers and writers. We start it with children many times when they're born, sometimes before they're born. The average in the Western world is at 6 months of age, but many of us start before that. So shared reading is where we pick up a book and we read to and with somebody. Now, the catchphrase for shared reading is, it's all about the interaction. We don't pick up a book with a baby and just read it from cover to cover. Instead, we're sitting there and we're reading and we're saying, oh, look at this page, there's a puppy dog here. We love puppy dogs, don't we? And the baby just looks at us like we're insane, or is that just me? But everything we're doing is language, language, language. We are increasing their knowledge about the world and we're increasing their language. So we do lots and lots of rich interactions around books. Now, many of us do that because we've been told by early childhood educators that we need to be reading to our babies. One of my friends, said she did it just because she was so bored. Whatever the reason, we are reading these books to contribute to our children's literacy knowledge later on and to contribute to their language today. So, we want to do frequent shared book reading. Research says 3+ a day is what makes a difference. So we're going to read 3 or more books to our children, and doing that we're going to teach them new vocabulary. As I said before, we know it helps joint attention. It encourages them to engage with pictures and books, and it helps with their, and again I should have oral in brackets, their language skills, and it develops their early literacy skills. So what do we want to do? There's a phrase that comes from Natari Syverson and her colleagues that's comment, ask, respond, CAR, and a lot of you will have heard that. There are lots of different constructs for doing shared reading, but all of them come back to the same basic formula. So what we know that we do is we're reading a book with a child or an individual, and we do something to get their attention. Ooh. And then we ask a question. Do you remember when we went to the farm? And then we wait, and we wait for 10 seconds. And if they don't take a turn, we model what they could have said. And we do this with babies at 2 months of age, because what we're doing is we're modelling the conversation structure that we can have around a book. We're modelling turn taking. We're modelling joint attention. We're modelling all of those skills that lead to language development and to literacy development. So, ooh, there's a pig. Do you remember when we saw a pig at the farm? It was smelly, wasn't it? And so I've just done comment, ask, respond. I've given the comment that draws their attention, I've asked the question, and I've responded. In the beginning, the question is very open-ended, and it is often something that requires a 1 or 2 word response or even a yes-no response, and then the questions get more complex as we go. The really important thing is that the research shows us again and again that if the learner, the individual, isn't able to respond, the parent models the response. And so, as I said, we start with those simple questions that need 1 or 2 word answers. Oh, what's that? Yeah, it's a doggy. We love doggies, don't we? Any of those would be a beginning shared reading, comment, ask, respond. And then as we move on, we might ask more abstract or questions that require multiple word answers. And so we slowly get more and more complex. And no one teaches us how to do this. We just follow our child's lead. And that's the really important thing in shared reading, is that we are constantly following the individual's lead. We're looking at what they do. We're looking at the books that we like. We're looking at the pages that they really engage with. And we are stopping more on the pages that they like. And we're reading the books that they like again and again, because we're learning that they're the books that they engage with. And so it's very much about following their lead as much as we can. So we're going to have a look at a book, and I have a volunteer from the audience, Siobhan, who's going to come and help me read this book. This is a book from an Australian author called Aaron Blaby, and this is called Piranhas Don't Eat Bananas. So Siobhan is going to be the grumpy piranha. She picked it. All right, do you want to turn? That's my notes from the previous session. Yeah. There we go. All right. Piranhas don't eat bananas. Hey there, guys. Would you like a banana?
What's wrong with you, Brian? You're a piranha.
Well, how about some silver beet?
Are you serious, Brian? We eat feet.
Or would you rather a bowl of peas?
Stop it, Brian. We eat knees.
Well, how? I bet you'd like some juicy plums.
That's it, Brian. We eat bums.
We don't eat... Oh, your turn.
We don't eat apples. We don't eat beans. We don't eat veggies. We don't eat greens. We don't eat melons. We don't eat bananas. And the reason is simple, mate. We are piranhas.
Well, I think that's silly, guys. Fruit is the best.
We can't take much more of this. Give it a rest.
Okay, I'll stop then. You'll hear no more chatter, but only if you try my awesome fruit platter.
Give it here, then.
You have to make eating noises. I think that was a bit too gentle for a piranha. All right, I'll be nice.
Thank you.
So what do you think, guys? Is it yucky or yum?
It's very nice, Brian, but we still prefer bum.
Awesome. And that's for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for volunteering. Okay, so I wanted to read that book to give us all a common ground to be talking about this. So if I'm talking about an early communicator or someone who is still a receptive communicator, the sort of comment, ask, respond I'm going to do is, look. And then I'll say, I'm asking a question. Do you like peas? And then if the individual doesn't respond, I would model, no, I don't think you like them. And then I would do the normal adult response of, you make funny faces when we eat peas. You say, yucky. And so I am taking all 4 turns at that stage. I'm keeping it pretty simple. I'm asking a question that has a yes and no response. Now, those of you who have a pod book know that you're going more to say, I'm asking a question, you can tell me yes or no. Do you like peas? That's the way you would do it. The Centre for Literacy and Disability Studies has found that whatever your system, if you stop and say, I'm asking a question, it is much easier for the students to understand where the questions fall in this model. So if you're using Preloque Quota Go, you would say, questions, I'm asking a question, and then go out of that and go to food, and you've got the language there to say, you like peas. They might be the words that you're saying. So it doesn't matter what your language system is, you want to let the students or the individuals know that you are asking a question to make it easier for them to understand the comment, ask, respond part of this model. Now, as a student becomes a more competent communicator, we keep our comments pretty similar because they're just about bringing attention. And then we ask a slightly more abstract question. So now instead of, do you like peas? I'm saying, what's this? Now, one of the big differences is the do you like peas, it doesn't really have a right and wrong answer. I mean, you can say to me, do you like peas? And one day I'll say yes, and another day I'll say no. Brussels sprouts, however, always a no. But peas, it's, up and down. And it doesn't really matter if it's right or wrong. We've gone up a level now. There's an actual correct answer, and we are expecting the student to answer that. Now, we might still do some co-construction. So when Kelly was talking about, no, it wasn't Kelly, it was Tina, was talking about her son contributing to a task at school, she mentioned that they navigated to his feelings page, and then he said all the right feelings, they were very appropriate to the topic from that page. This is the sort of level that we're at now. So this second column down, we do some co-construction, so I might navigate them to the right page so that they can answer peas. And they can answer fish. So I'll go to the animals page, whatever system I'm in, and then they answer. So I'm giving them a bit of scaffolding, but not answering for them as I was at the earlier stage. And then they've answered. Now, if they answer horse, I can say, oh, really? Are you being funny? Because the last thing I want to do is say, you're wrong. You're no good at this. So instead, I'm going to go, I think you're being funny. That's not a horse, that's a fish. And I will model the right answer. So it's all about constantly helping them to realise that they can do this, they are amazing, they are awesome, and they are going to be readers and writers. And so then I'll finish up with a final comment like, oh yeah, Grandma has fish at her house. You like looking at them, don't you? Now, as the students progress, we're now at students who are perhaps contributing 2 to 5 words to a communication turn. We go to an even more complex question. So now it's, oh, I'm asking a question. What are the fish doing here? And now I want them to be able to say eat fruit. So now they've got to navigate between 2 different pages in their good, robust language system to contribute that answer. And I shouldn't be scaffolding them to navigate at all. They're just taking their turn. And then I'm going to say, yes, but I don't think fish really eat fruit, do they? And then we're going up to the expressive communicator, so 5+ words. My comment, again, pretty simple. It's just an attention getter. Crazy. Where do you think they got the fruit from? They might say supermarket, they might say found it floating, it doesn't matter what they say, we continue to move on. Now, if they want to have another 5 turns about this, if they want to talk about their favourite fruit or that they like strawberries or, you know, they don't like something or other else or they'd really like to eat bum, then we keep going. It's all about following their lead. Now, a lot of kids that I know really like this book because of that BUM word in there. I don't know why it's the most attractive bit in the book, but it is. And so that is often something we end up having quite a bit of a conversation about. And that's fine. You follow their lead. So if we're going to have multiple turns about this topic, that's what we do. Okay. Now, I jumped ahead of myself and I've already mentioned AAC. So everything I've said so far comes from research with typically developing children and speech. We just take that and we insert AAC instead of oral speech. So what we know is shared reading is that excellent opportunity for teaching vocabulary. It doesn't matter whether it's Proloquo to Go or Pod or Speak for Yourself or LAMP, it doesn't matter what the system is. We are going to be modelling that system in shared reading as much as we can. It's a great chance for us to practice. It's a great chance. Pat Miranda talks about putting language in or putting language deposits in so we can make a withdrawal later. And that's what we're doing at the beginning of shared reading. So, excuse me, now I've put in red the things that we would be saying with AAC at different levels. So the general rule with modelling AAC is that we model 1 to 2 more words than the individual is using. So if your child is not yet using AAC, you are modelling 1 to 2 words every time that you talk. So with the comment, we're just going to model look. If you've got a pod book, it's on the front page. If you've got Proloquo to Go set to 7 by 11, it's on the front page. It's on the beginning of a lot of AAC systems, so you can model look. And then all I'm going to model, let's say I'm in Proloquo to Go, on the front page I'm going to go to questions, I'm going to choose question, and then I'm going to go to things and to food, and I'm going to model peas. The whole time I'm saying the full thing. I'm asking a question, do you like peas? And they're the words that I'm modelling. If they don't respond, then I'm going to model. If they do respond in any way, so if they respond by pulling away or if they respond by making a funny face, I am going to interpret that and take that as their turn. And then I'm going to do the formal adult's response. And so in the red, we're now matching the student's language and making the shared reading more complex as they develop with their language. Okay, first video. Okay, and you can nod your head like you sometimes do. And if not, I've got a yes and a no. Okay. All right. So this is Cara, and Cara's at a mainstream school in my town of Adelaide. We've got My Granddad, which I know is a favourite of yours. The school has a unit for students with physical disability. It's a favourite of yours. Or we've got Follow Me. Follow Me. And I'm wondering which one you'd like. Do you want My Granddad or Follow Me? Not sure. Shall I give you some other options? We've also got Busting, which might be a new book for you. We've got Just Like Bossy Bear. And another one I know you've read, Where is the Green Sheep? And Cara has just spent 90 minutes in her walker too, so she's finding it really hard to keep her head up. I think you were telling me, yes, I want the My Granddad book. And I can see from your reading box in your room that that's the book you choose the most often. Yeah. So we're going to read My Granddad. You ready? So Cara participates in shared reading daily in her classroom, and whoever does the shared reading with her marks down the book that she chooses. Cara has a tub with between 20 to 30 books that she can choose from in shared reading. Research tells us that 20 to 50 books leads to a good enough or a good choice so that students can find the book that they really like. Cara is choosing like 3 to 4 times a week this grandfather book at the moment. It might change in a few weeks. She's going to read that a lot at the moment, and that repeated reading of books is really important in shared reading. So some of the early research that was done with students with different abilities showed that often the adult picked the book that was read, and they often picked to read a new book every single time. What we want to do is we want to give the kids control of choosing the book, because the books that they like are not necessarily the books that we like. My 2 nephews who lived with me for several years loved Thomas the Tank Engine. I hate Thomas the Tank Engine. Those preachy, pious stories, not for me. So, what the students like, what the kids like, is not always what we like. And so we want them to be in charge of picking the book. She's become really interested in this My Grandfather book. She might choose to read that most times in a week for a term or 2 terms, and that's okay. Every time we read a book repeatedly to a student, they get to focus more and more on how the book works. They get to have more of an understanding of the book. You can have deeper and richer conversations about it, and you certainly get more and more engagement. My Granddad by Jeanette Rowe. My Granddad by Jeanette Rowe. My Granddad. Let's have a look. Oh, Kyra. My Granddad tells me stories. Let's grab your pod. I am going back to 10A, and I wanted to ask you, what does your granddad do? What does your granddad do with you? We were talking about activities that you could do with your granddad, and you were telling me if it was something to do with food and drink, transport, characters, animals, little words, or alphabet. Is it one of those? Yes. Okay. Is it food and drink? No. Is it transport? No. Is it characters? Yes. Is your granddad a character? I bet he is. All right. Off to characters. Now, because Cara uses partner-assisted scanning, it takes a while to stop and do comment, ask, respond. So in the original research around shared reading, they actually say maximise the interactions page by page. In other words, stop on every page and do this. Now, if I did that with Kyra, we would be reading this book for an hour and a half. We don't have an hour and a half to read this book. She's got to go and have lunch in a little while, and she has certain other commitments at school that she needs to meet. And so I stop 1 to 3 times in every book reading. There was a suggestion at one point that we just read like 3 pages and then stop and read 3 pages another day, but then we miss out on all that amazing repeated reading that has its own purposes within literacy. So we're stopping between 1 and 3 times, depending on how long we have, and we're doing shared reading 3+ times a day. So 3+ times a day, maybe when Kyra first gets into school, in actual self-selected reading time. They do a group shared reading with her whole class where the teacher picks a book and reads it for the whole week. And then sometimes, quite frequently, shared reading happens during eating time, and it can also happen at the end of the day, just before they go and catch their buses and things, while they're each waiting for different buses or taxis to arrive. So there's multiple opportunities for her to participate in shared reading. Some of those is where she's driving it and picking the book, and some of those are more in a group situation where the teacher is picking the book or one of the students in the classroom picks the book. And this takes a while, but that's okay, because the catchphrase for shared reading is it's all about the interaction. So we're stopping and letting Kyra make her contribution to the shared reading. Now, the other thing I have to tell you is I'm using the wrong pod book. So I was heading into work with her and I knew that she had a one-page opening pod, and someone gave me this pod, and I thought, oh, she must have gone up to a different pod. So we went in and we did the whole session, and she coped really well. She didn't tell me anything that I was using the wrong pod book with her. And at the end I turned around and there was her education assistant holding the correct pod, and I said, oh, I thought this was the wrong pod, and she killed herself laughing. She thought it was so funny I'd been using the wrong pod book with her the whole time. And her speech language pathologist was there, and she said, great, we'd been thinking about moving her up to a 2-page opening pod book, and this showed she's able to do it. So I said, I'm really embarrassed to show this video with the wrong pod book, and they said it's all a learning experience. So we'll finish watching the video. And do you need I, you, he, we, they, or people? No. Do you need past tense, will, can, do, am, is, are, ing, or actions? No. And you shook your head as well. That was great. So
Not
she's learning
want,
to nod
have,
and shake
get,
rather than
see,
use the symbols.
give, like.
Very hard when you've just had 90 minutes in a standing frame and you're pretty
No.
shattered.
Okay. To, go, by, pretend, new, favourite, or descriptions. One of those, yes or no?
And she
You're
nodded
looking
and I
over here
didn't
at
see it.
yes. To. Yes or no? No. And you shook your head. Good. Go. No. Buy. He doesn't buy you stuff, does he? No. Pretend. Yes or no? No. New.
No.
No. Favourite. Are you telling me he's a favourite? Yes or no? You're not looking at either one.
And
Oh,
she
you
nodded.
gave me a nod. A little nod. Oh, and now you're looking at yes. Granddad's your favourite. I wonder if that's why this is your favourite book. So this one says my...
Okay.
It's called We're Going on a Dress Hunt, which is written by me.
So, a couple of weeks ago, Sharon was messaging me and she said something about the live streaming. And I checked with the families who I'd taken videos with, and not all of them were happy for the videos to be live streaming. So I sent an SOS to 2 families I'd met when I was in the UK doing workshops a couple of years ago, Tracy Campbell and Jules Witchner, who are both incredible. And this is a video from Tracy. So they're reading a book. Her daughter Leah is a teenager. Leah is just beginning to be a reader and writer, early conventional reader and writer, transitional. She knows most of her emergent skills and is moving on to learning her conventional skills. We know that shared reading is valuable up until children are at a grade 2 reading level, or up until individuals at a grade 2 reading level. So Leah is still participating in shared reading. This is a video that Tracy actually did for other parents in her Glasgow region to learn about shared reading. So she's custom written a book for Leah because Leah doesn't particularly like children's picture books because she's a teenager, and that is fair enough. Sometimes we'll find that teenagers like some of the children's picture books, and Sally and Clendon and I have a Pinterest board called Picture Books for Older Readers that we do find picture books that teenagers engage with. But Leah is a very teenage girl, and so she really likes things like dresses and flowers and makeup and jewellery and all of those things. So Tracy's written this book about we're going on a dress hunt.
Tracy Campbell, and it's a parody of the well-known classic We're Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen. So, we're going on a dress hunt. Let's see, the book we're using is a Pod 48 plus sides panel, and that is the book that Leah uses for her communication. Okay, so we are going on a dress hunt. We are going to find a pretty one. What a beautiful shop. We are not scared.
Shouldn't.
We shouldn't be scared to know we're not scared. Turn the page. Uh-oh, grass. A long grass skirt. That's page 1. We can't get alphabet little words. We can't get little words. Turn the page. Can't get over it. We can't get under it.
Mama.
Oh no! We've got to get in it.
So you can see how much more language she's modelling.
that's right.
So Leah
So
is
she's
regularly
watched- she's
using
watched-
2
she's
and
watched-
3 word
she's watched-
utterances. So Tracy is modelling at that much higher level.
Opinion.
And this
I
is truly
think
whole
that-
family shared reading.
Turn the
We've got
page.
Dad and her brother and her
Crazy.
sister's videoing.
Back to page 2A. What do you think? Finn, do you want to tell us what you think? You go round, Dad. What do you think, Finn? You
I
tell us.
think.
You think?
Dad's trying to tell him and he's like, no.
I think weird.
You think weird? Is that a good word? What do you think, Leah?
Or something.
Or something.
I
Wow.
think it's something. I think it's something as well.
Okay. So, I mentioned CAR before, stands for comment, ask, respond. There's a field of literacy called dialogic reading, and they look into the dialogue that we do while we're doing shared reading. So what they have found is that in that A, the A for ask, and I said on an earlier slide that it's about inviting participation, not so much asking a question as inviting the child, individual, adult, whoever it is, to participate. There are 5 things that we regularly do. The first one is completion, and completion is where we might start a repeated line and the learner finishes it. Now, Kelly mentioned a Big Mac switch for going back and forth between school and home earlier. This is another place where a Big Mac switch is fabulous. So if I record, we're going on a dress hunt, we're going to catch a big one, what a beautiful day, we're not scared, or what a beautiful shop I think it was, we're not scared, we can record that on the Big Mac. Now, completion is about timing. So I record that on the Big Mac for the person that I'm doing shared reading with to participate in the book reading. I kind of start it where, and I do an expectant pause. I do not have the Big Mac fly in and fly out. If I record that on a Big Mac and I just put it in front of them when it's their turn to say it, what they're learning to do is to press the switch when I put the switch in front of them. What we want them to learn is the same thing that every other emergent literacy learner learns in completion. Completion is learning about timing. There are specific times that we say that repeated line or repeated phrase in the book. So you need to wait, you need to learn to stay off the switch, and you need to press the switch when it's the right time. And just as children who are speaking will start with the repeated line at the wrong time, that's okay. That's how you learn. And so it's not about learning to press the switch when the switch comes in, it's about learning to press the switch when it's the right time to press the switch. The next one that we do is recall. So we're reading piranhas don't like bananas or don't eat bananas, and we say, what fruit have they eaten already? Or what fruit has he talked about? That's recall, just talking about what's already happened in the book. The next form of ask that we can do is open-ended. What other fruits do you think they might eat? Or what other body parts do you think piranhas might eat? Any of those are open-ended. WH questions. Now, WH makes it on this list, but what I want to say is don't ask too many testing questions. There's some videos of shared reading on YouTube that no one should ever watch. I wish I could put a mask over them, where a mother is reading a book to her child and she says on every page, "What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that?" Seriously? If I wanted to be tested, I would go somewhere else. It's not about that. It's about having an interaction and having fun. So keep your WH questions to things like, what do you think he'll eat next? And where else do you think they might go? It's not about labelling. And then distancing. Distancing is the word that doesn't make sense. Distancing is about making the book closer to the learner's life. So that example I gave of, yes, we see fish at Grandma's house, don't we, is an example of distancing. Or we ate bananas yesterday, didn't we? That's an example of distancing. So distancing is about bringing the book closer to the learner, not about taking it further away. Just ignore the label and do the thing. Okay, but wait, there's more. So, car and crowd is the most frequent thing that we talk about in shared reading, but there's a lot more that we can do with shared reading. So, we're going to talk about getting magnificent. Now, the Centre for Literacy and Disability Studies has a great catchphrase called the Magnificent Seven of shared reading, and there's 7 things that you can do. There are more than 7, but let's move on to the Magnificent 7. So the first one is crowd in car, which we've just talked about. So you can comment, invite participation, which is what A is, and then respond. And you do the crowd, the completion, the recall, the open-ended, the WH and the distancing in that ask bit. The second one is what I talked about before. So they have found that individuals find it much easier to begin participating in crowd themselves when we constantly tell them, I'm asking you a question. So all of this, of course, I said it's about following the child's lead. We are teaching them what they can do with the book. So the day when they take over and ask you a question is really exciting. But what we're finding is just as the research says that many people who use AAC can be quite passive and they wait to be asked before they respond, that can really happen with car in crowd as well. Because we're always running the show and we're doing the car in the crowd and we're being really, fun and interactive with it. We really need to start being more explicit that this is now a question. And then we do the next one, which is saying to them, do you have a question? So what we're now doing is 1 day a week, we don't do car and crowd. Instead, we just say, you're in charge today. You're going to be asking the questions. And for the very early kids, we're navigating to the questions page. And if they say who, we make something of it. If they say where, we make something of it. So we are giving them that chance for them to start being the leader. And so we're needing to be more explicit about that to get that happening for a number of individuals. We already talked about make it real. It's just another reminder. Make it real, make it about their lives. Link to letters. It's a really simple and easy one when you think about it. One of the things that we want to do is we want to increase every emergent literacy learner's knowledge of letters. And so we want to embed that. We talk about being explicit and incidental with our letter teaching. So incidental is where we just mention letters, whatever we're doing. So I'm trying to teach Siobhan to read her name. Sorry, Siobhan. And we see a stop sign and I say, look, there's an S for stop. Wow, it's also an S for Siobhan. How cool is that? That's my incidental alphabet instruction. We can do this as part of shared reading too. So saying to yourself, right, today I am really going to focus on all the letters in their name, and every time we come across one of them in the book, I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to have my Proloquo to go or my pod open on the alphabet page, or I'm going to have flashcards with the letters of their names there, and we are going to talk about their letters, their special letters, all the way through the book. Or if you know that the individual you're working with is still consolidating 6 letters in the alphabet and knows the other, whatever that is, 18, then you have those 6 ready to go, and they're the 6 that you're focusing on. Rhyme and sounds. One of the reasons I picked the Piranhas and Bananas book is because it's a fabulous rhyming book. So I'm going to talk more about phonological awareness and phonemic awareness towards the end of this presentation, but one of the things that we know is really important for learning the code of speech and learning to understand the code of speech, so building the capacity for every individual with their receptive language, is to help them learn about the rhymes and the patterns and the words that are in speech. And so rhyming and sounds in books helps them build their phonological awareness and helps them build that code and understanding of what's going on. And then the final one, of course, is teaching vocabulary. And I put a series of don't forgets down the bottom on that poster too. So, my granddad helps me make things. And we've got another K for Kyra in make. Making a kite, and a kite starts with K too. K for Kyra. Wow. My granddad rides with me on his old scooter. That one looks funny, yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we can build that into any book. With the rhymes and the sounds, we're pointing them out to students. If you're using a pod book, on the alphabet page, there are some great symbols for begins with, ends with, and same. You can go to same and different as well. So we're talking about sounds, words that sound the same and words that sound different, and we're explicitly pointing them out to students. Now, this is a bit of a segue, and it's not really. In terms of teaching AAC or learning AAC, what we're aiming for every individual is communicative competence. And Janice Lights talks about there are 4 individual areas of communicative competence that we want to improve. We're working on all of these all of the time. The first one is linguistic competence, so understanding what the words in our AAC system can be used for. The second one is social competence, so understanding who we say what to and the rules of turn taking, etc. The third one is operational competence, knowing that if I want to be louder, I can go to the volume button and make it louder in my Proloquo to Go. I love the new shout feature in Proloquo to Go. And so we are... Operational competence is knowing that when I point to a page that has a number on it in my pod book, someone will turn the page for me. All of those things are operational competence. And then the one I really want to talk about now is strategic competence. So strategic competence is defined as making the best use that you can of the words that are in your system. We are never going to have every word in any language in an AAC system. You think those pod books or AAC systems are complex enough already? Can you imagine if you put every word in there? You would need a truck behind you to carry your AAC system. So what we want to do is we want to help each individual learn to communicate the best they can with the vocabulary they have. And Kelly mentioned this briefly before when she was talking about inclusion. She was talking about one of the things that we do is we teach students how they can describe something with their system when they don't have the language there. And so that's strategic competence. Now, this is a friend of mine, Callaghan, and, well, I say a friend of mine, he's a young man I admire enormously. Callaghan wanted to tell his mum to laminate something, so he went to the food page and chose lemon, and then he went to the verb page and chose ate to say lemonade. That's strategic competence. Another student that I know wanted to tell his teacher that he needed to do a poo and he didn't know where to find poo, so he went to the verbs page and said do. So all of those are strategic competence. They're thinking about how to use the vocabulary that we have to the best advantage. Now, when we're doing shared reading, one of the things that we should be doing is lots of talking about the vocabulary. You will have words in books that your children may not necessarily know. You will have words that are not in your AAC system, so you can't model them. A very good example in Australia is nocturnal. So we do Australian animals in grade 4 in virtually every school in Australia. And does anyone have nocturnal in their AAC system? No. Same for us. What we do is we actually teach the word by teaching the concept. So what can you say in your AAC system instead of nocturnal? You can say awake at night. You've got that language. Or asleep in the day. You've got that language. That actually teaches what the word means much more effectively than just using the word nocturnal. And so by doing that, we are constantly teaching two things. One is vocabulary, the meaning of words, and the other is that strategic competence. We are modelling for them how we can make the best use of the vocabulary they've got. And so we are constantly building their vocabulary, plus teaching them that important part of communicative competence that we want them all to learn. And so when they say in shared reading that we should be explaining vocabulary, we are, and we're also teaching strategic competence. So I have been in classrooms many a time where I've had to explain piranha, and scary fish is the best thing that I've come up with. You could say fish eat people. One student turned around and told me it was like a shark, and I said, yes, a bit like a shark. Would you agree? Kind of. Not really much, but kind of. They're both scary. They both eat people. I don't know if you have to explain bum to your students, but you know. So whatever the words are in the book that you think they don't know, that's where we do the vocabulary teaching, using that descriptive language teaching model. And so shared reading is all of those things. Yes, it's comment, ask, respond. It's also a chance to build vocabulary and language using descriptive language teaching. It's a chance to build alphabet knowledge, to build an understanding of rhyme. It's so many different things that we can build into shared reading. And we start it with emergent readers of any level. And we start really simply with really simple books and very simple language, and then we keep building up until they're at a grade 2 reading level. And the other thing is, if you have kids who don't like books right now, don't give up, because we will be able to find books that they love. Some of the students that I've worked with, I don't know if you know the Pete the Cat books, but Pete Sings and Dances, they have been the books that they've engaged with first because of all the music built into them. For other students, it's been finding a book about their favourite topics. So here's Jules Witchner. Jules, she's just incredible. She's a mum from the UK. Her son Charlie has cortical vision impairment as well as Angelman syndrome. She has had to do a lot of adaptation of books to get Charlie to engage with them because of his vision impairment, and he has a high level of sensory needs as well. So one of the things she's found that has worked is a prop with a book. It's not a prop for Charlie to handle, because if Charlie handles the prop, he becomes completely interested in the prop, not the book. It's a prop for Jules to handle, to give him access to the book by making the book more interesting. So she doesn't need props anymore, but in the beginning she definitely needed props to engage Charlie with books. This is the book Wombat Stew, and they are reading it with Wally the Wombat puppet. She's got here a note. He was so that was the same day, so engaged and focused that he even turned off the bus videos he was watching on his iPad without any tantrums. and they stayed on the actions page because there was so much to say using preposition words. So she's got a focus for that day about preposition words. If you don't know the book, you're putting animals in the pot. Not animals in the pot. You're putting things like flies and gum nuts and mud in the pot to make the base for the stew that then the wombat's going to go into. So there's lots of opportunities to use preposition words. Okay, so that was shared reading. We're going to go on and talk really briefly about writing because I'm going to be talking about writing a lot more later on. So, there are 3 types of emergent writing that we want every individual to have an opportunity to participate in. The first one is all of them are about language development. So, every time you write, the first thing you need to do is think of an idea. If I said to all of you, write about a dog, you've all got pen and paper, write about a dog. What do you need to do first of all? Think. It's about an idea, isn't it? You can't start moving that little pen around, whatever your pen is, some of you on iPads and computers and keyboards, until you've developed an idea. And then you need language for that idea. If I asked you to write about a dog, I know from previous experience, most of you would write about a dog that you know. You write from the known, and that's where you start. There would be a couple of people in the room who'd write about a fictional dog, but most of you would write about a dog that you know. And all of that is about language. And the more that you write, the more it helps you facilitate language development and vice versa. Writing and language are indivisible. And so we do different forms of writing. The first one is writing with adults. Now the focus here is very much for the individuals to be generating language. So if we're doing writing with adults, and this book was written by a class after reading Piranhas Don't Eat Bananas, so they are writing this book directly after reading that book, and the teacher has said we're going to write about bums. Now, she's got a group of like 10, 11 and 12-year-olds whose favourite page in that book is the bum page, and they love talking about bums, and a couple of them in the classroom constantly are implying that other people have done something with their bum. And so there's a lot of bum discussion happening in this classroom. And so she's chosen that they're going to write about bums. And each of them has used their AAC system to select a word to write about bums. So Georgia is a student with Angelman syndrome in this classroom, and she has said family bum. So her job is to go to her AAC system and pick a descriptive word. After they've done that, then they get to choose a picture to illustrate it. We've got funny bum. We've got Dr. Bum. We've got all right bum. We've got naughty bum. We've got looking bum. I don't know why I think of Mary Louise every time I see that picture, but I do. And we've got my bum. So each student has found some language for talking about bums. That can be more and less complex. You could have a sentence like, on the holidays I. You could have, more language, less language. But the job for the students is just about generating language in that activity. You can do other forms of writing with adults, which I'll talk about later. We want them to see writing from adults. It's important that they see us using print. Marilyn Yeager Adams wrote a book in 1991 called Beginning to Read, Thinking and Learning About Print, where she talked about individuals in their emergent literacy stage get 1,400 hours of emergent literacy experiences. And she talked about seeing mum and dad write as one of those important emergent literacy experiences. If we think about the writing that we would do around children, we write a quick note to remind ourselves to do something. It is teaching them about the function of print. It is teaching them why we write. We don't write for no meaning, for no reason. We write for real reasons. And we write to remind ourselves. We write to give ourselves a prompt or a reminder. We add something to a shopping list. we send an email to someone, we send a text message. Each of those things that we do for writing has a purpose, and we want our individuals to see us writing for a real reason, because then they understand why it is we even write. And then the final one we want them to have an opportunity to do is to write by themselves. And again, I'm going to talk about that later. This is Charlie's setup for writing. Charlie's the boy you saw before reading the Wombat Stew book with his mum Jules. And so they have a low-tech pod open to a high-contrast keyboard. They have a high-tech pod for him to compose some language and for Jules and him to talk to each other during the writing. He is choosing letters from a flip chart and Jules is writing those down. So there's all of those different pieces there for him to participate in independent writing. Okay, so the next one is working with letters and sounds. So, letter knowledge. Knowledge of the alphabet is highly linked with later literacy success. If we assess a student's knowledge of the alphabet and they know most of the alphabet at the beginning of school, they are much more likely to become a reader and writer later on. Learning the alphabet is a really important skill set that you need to become a reader and writer. And the very cool thing is you can have so much fun with it at any age. The other thing that comes under this category is phonological awareness. So, children who are developing speech develop an increasingly complex understanding of speech and how it works. Phonological awareness is the sound system of the language, and it's how we use words and how we learn to understand words. For some of our children with complex communication needs, this is one of the hardest skills to develop. We know that many children with complex communication needs really struggle in this area. When you think about a child who is learning to speak, they are constantly making mistakes and learning that the sounds in the words are important. If they say the wrong word, people misunderstand them. For students who are using AAC, they don't have that opportunity because everything is whole words with pictures. And then they get to writing and suddenly we're asking them to listen to the sounds in the words. And so that fabulous job that I forget whose example it was of, Jessie, it was, Kelly's example where her daughter had written Jessie is absolutely brilliant. That she has heard that there's the G in Jessie and then written the word C, so she wrote Jessie G-S-E-A, shows us that she is developing a really strong sense of the sounds that go in words, to be able to hear that they are the sounds within that word. And so what we need to do is we need to give kids as much possible practice as we can in phonological awareness as well. So when I say it's letters and sounds, it really is both of those things. So, working on letters and sounds, we need to be aware that it is a challenge for every individual who is learning to read and write, not just the students with complex communication needs, but for everybody. And what we want to do is help them to build that ability to attend to and analyse the sound structure of language. And it sounds really complex, but hopefully I'm going to give you some ideas that you can put in place to get that happening. So, we are going to play with letters and sounds. I said before that we know best practice in teaching letters and sounds is a mixture of incidental and explicit. So we're going to do things like we're reading the book and we're going to talk about the rhymes in the book. That's an incidental activity around sounds. Or we're going to talk around the letters in the book and that's incidental. And then there will be times where we actually pull out letters of the alphabet and we play a game with them that's much more explicit. We talk about them as much as we can and we set them up to play with them. We know that we need to start with letter names as the primary focus. We're still going to talk about the sounds that the letters make, but what we know is that it's easier to learn the letters when they have a single label associated with them. So learning that A is much easier than learning that A is A, and R. When we're learning them right from the beginning with all the sounds mixed in, it makes it harder to learn them. We're going to mention the sounds as we read books and as we play, but we're going to do a primary focus on letter names until they know most of the letters, well, a lot of the letters a lot of the time. To do that, we're going to use alphabet books. So this is a beautiful example from Manon, who's an Angelman mum from the Netherlands that I met when I was there. Manon has built this gorgeous alphabet book for her daughter. It's deliberately in a ring binder so that they can add pages to it as her daughter becomes interested in things. So each page has something that her daughter is really interested in. It has a tactile version of the letter. Again, we know from research that being able to feel and explore the shape of the letter helps you learn it. And so it also has a link to her pod book on each page. It's a very gorgeous alphabet book. So her daughter really likes balls, and she's got the language for big and small up there, as well as the big and small balls. I love this CD one. I haven't seen a CD for a while, but you know. Doors. Bucket. Anyone here want to say squirrel in Dutch? I'm so tempted, but I know I would get it completely wrong. Eekhoorn. Okay. So such a beautiful book. She makes the letters out of sandpaper and tactile, different things, so you can trace around and fill the letters, and it's constantly expanding. So if her daughter suddenly becomes interested in panda bears, there will be an extra page added for that. It's just beautiful. Tar Heel Reader. I think some of you know Tar Heel Reader. If you don't, fabulous online free resource of simple and easy to read books. This is a book from Tar Heel Reader. There's over 5,000 alphabet books on Tar Heel Reader. So this is a Z book. I'm just telling you all, it's Z. Z. Okay? Z, not Z. Z. Got that over. Okay. Some of my favourite things start with the letter Z, like zebra. See, hear the Z? All right, I'll stop. Zipper. Zinnias. Zigzag. And zero. But best of all is the zoo. Really short, simple alphabet book from Tar Heel Reader. A lot of them are 5 or 6 pages. Lots of beautiful things that you can talk about and do some alphabet talking at the same time. And of course, we all love a good alphabet song. I am obsessed with this particular alphabet song. Sesame Street has had a number of pop stars record alphabet songs that are available on their YouTube channel, and this is definitely my favourite.
This letter's you know it's true. It starts in words, there are more than a few. You start and get up. You start food and there's some in this cup.
Okay, enough.
26 letters are in the alphabet, but we're here to sing about you.
Okay. No one else enjoyed that as much as I did you? It's embarrassing but true. And then there's all the more explicit alphabet stuff that we can do, many of which is also a great game. It's a fabulous sensory break for some of the kids that I work with. They can go and do alphabet stuff. We can tie letters outside and ask them to go and find them. There's lots of different ways that we can use the alphabet. Obviously, Play-Doh stamps, we can play letter fishing, those great huge foam mats that you get with letters in them. What's lovely about them too is the letters come out and then you've got a really nice big tactile letter to feel around. I love alphabet cookie cutters. My parents came round for dinner and we had tomato tarts. And I had to label my dad's with an R because he's Robert, and my mum's with a C because she's Cora, and mine was labelled with a J because I'm Jane. And I just used phyllo pastry. And then you can pull the phyllo out and you can ice it and experience the shapes again. There's so many different things that you can do with the alphabet. Do any of your kids like water? Exactly. How many different bath letters can you get? Jules Witchner has some speaking bath tiles that stick to the side of her bath and then say the letter names as you press them. There are so many different things that you can do with the alphabet around water that will be a fabulous motivator and involving activity. This is one of the Crayola light-up boards. A lot of the kids love these boards, whether they have cortical vision impairment or not. I can just sit there and you can see how bad I am at drawing, but they actually are interested in how bad I am at drawing. So I can write letters, we can talk about them, we can play with the alphabet in their AAC system, we can play in so many different ways with the alphabet. This is just a very quick and dirty game that I made up for one student, just pegging letters on a paper plate. Cost me a whole 20 cents to make. Yeah, so many different things we can do. This is a series of Facebook posts from Jules, who I think is one of the most creative alphabet people I know. So Charlie really likes the trampoline. She got a set of balls and wrote the alphabet, just the 4 key letters they were focusing on at that stage. Now, while I'm talking about that, never do a letter of the week. Research shows that it doesn't matter what group we're talking about, letter of the week doesn't really work. What we want to do is a minimum of 2 letters, because when you have 2 letters minimum, you can compare and contrast between them. It's actually easier to learn what B looks like if you've got C to compare it to. So they are doing 4 letters, fabulous. Somewhere between 2 and 6 letters for a very early alphabet learner. And then once they know more than 50% of the alphabet, I would do all 26 letters at once. So this is Jules's trampoline that she's done up. The idea was that they were going to sit and bounce and throw balls at the right letter. Here Charlie is going through his ball bucket, and then they found words starting with the letter ball choice. They had the pod book ready to be able to chat about the letters. And at one point here he is taking a sensory break with the balls up his shirt, getting some extra pressure. And that, I find, is one of the nicest thing about alphabet activities, is there's so much sensory activities and breaks and things that you can build into them. This is them doing some shared reading with the Wonky Donkey. Do you all know that book? Excellent. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey, yee-haw. So, just as they're reading about the Wonky Donkey, Charlie got really into the Wonky Donkey once they got the iPad version of that book, and then Jules just happened to have a flashcard to hand, so she started talking about the D for donkey using the flashcard. This was her deliberately making up an alphabet activity for the book Handa's surprise.
F is for
She made up a whole alphabet book around their family, with each person holding the letter that started their name, and then that was the final page in the book. Okay, and then moving on from letters to the sound part. So we're now helping individuals figure out the code of speech. So we're going to read some rhyming books. This is my friend Leanne, and she is reading a book with Georgia. Georgia is in that class that wrote the Bums book. Georgia is obsessed with bums. The book that they're going to read is called Busting, and you know what that's about. So Georgia has chosen Busting. It's another great rhyming book.
This is Jane's book. Busting by Aaron Lady. Yeah, it's the sequel to your Bums book, isn't it? All right, Lou was busting for the loo. Lou needed the loo.
Oh, you're pointing to go.
Go. I'm going fast. But yikes, the loo had quite a queue. What on earth was Lou to do? Busting. What do you do when you're busting for the toilet? Cross our legs. I need the loo, screamed poor Lou. We need it too, replied the queue. I need it more, I do, cried Lou. Who needs it? Oh, that's not true, replied the queue. We know what you were trying to do. Your little plan will all see through. So don't you try and jump the queue.
Wait a
You wanna
moment.
have a look at yours.
There's a second copy.
We got multiple copies.
That's how much she likes this book.
You gonna keep up with me on this page? But geez, if you guys only knew how much I really need blue. That's your copy, isn't it? You'd let me through. You would. It's true. You really just don't have a clue. They don't know how much you need to go to the loo. Lou is busting. But all the queue told Lou, shoo. Oh, cried Lou, what shall I do? I'll have to find another Lou. Is that your favourite? Is that your favourite?
They're all waiting for the loo.
And so with that, away Lou flew. Because the queue was way too long.
That's what Georgia does when she pretends someone's farted. So, which is one of her very favourite things to do. I think I got accused about 20 times during that video. So, okay. You can play sound games. I Spy is a great one to play. Again, amazing Jules Witchner. This was her adaptation of it. So they were playing I Spy after bath time. She gave him the initial letter of the body part that she was going to tickle. And he knew that she was going to tickle his feet when she gave him the F and his nose when she gave him the N. Really cute way to link the alphabet to a favourite activity. Nursery rhymes and song lyrics. So the research tells us that nursery rhymes are one of the best ways to build kids' rhyming and awareness of rhymes within speech. Not appropriate for all of the individuals that we work with. One of the things I found when I was working as a teacher with teenagers was song lyrics are incredibly like nursery rhymes a lot of the time. So I would find out a student's favourite singer and I would look at the lyrics for their songs and often transport them into a book. So I would take a whole Taylor Swift song, I would put a couple of lines on a page and put a photo of Taylor Swift on the page and turn that into a beautiful rhyming book that they were really interested in because it was their favourite singer. So that's a little segment from a Taylor Swift song. The Beatles song lyrics are highly repetitive. So depending what sort of music your individual is into, they're a great way to get books with rhyme or just rhymes that you can sit and chant and sing. And that leads me to onset rhyme. So there is research with a whole heap of groups, from neurotypical children to children with ASD to children with Down syndrome to adults with cerebral palsy, that onset rhyme is one of the best ways to help them hear sounds in words. So onset rhyme is about taking the 38 word families from English, so like at and ill and ick, and turning them into a bit of an activity to enable you to talk about the changes that a single sound can make. So there are the word families that we have in English, the common ones, and I can take any of those word families. So if I take the ip word family, I can talk about sip, tip, zip. What else can I talk about? Yip, pip, and we can play with those words. What we want to do, if I go back to that photo actually, is we want to have some way of representing that change. So I make up lots of cards like this. The ending is one chunk. The research tells us that having the ending as a chunk and bringing in the initial sounds really helps kids to hear that it's those initial sounds that are changing. So I've got at, and I'm saying to the student, now I've got a picture of a hat, I'm going to make hat. And I grab the H and put it in front of the AT. And then I say, now I've got a picture of a cat and I'm going to make cat. And I'll grab the C and put it in front of the AT. In the beginning, I just introduce them to the word families. I can do that with a video. I can do it with a book. There are lots of onset rhyme books that are around.
You hear that?
Here's a great song.
It's the Big Pig song.
There was a pig, and he was big. He liked to dig and wear a wig. He did a jig and ate a fig. He was a big, big pig.
I can't hear you.
And in this video, it plays it like 12 times.
And he was big. He liked to dig.
Okay, moving on. So then we're going to model how the word family works. This is Lydia, one of the teachers I work with, and she is reading The Cat Who Just Wanted a Pat to her class. The word family they're focusing on for the week is AT. Lydia's introducing it with the pod, that's what they're going to read. And then she's going to pull out a folder where she can model the changes to the word family as she is talking about it.
Here we are. And we're going to look at words that have a first sound.
In the research, they call these passive tasks, where we're just modelling that change of one sound that it makes to the meaning of the word.
Okay. I'm going back to categories.
So she's used the keyboard page in the pod, or the alphabet page, to talk about initial sound, and that's what we're going to focus on. And now she's going to the book page to talk about reading a book.
Who just wanted a pat. There
And
once
now
was
she's
a
got her little folder.
cat. He loved to sit on a mat.
So she's just showing that change.
I gave him, oh look at that hat. I gave him a hat. I like the hat.
On my website are the templates for making these
He
photo
said, "I do not
folders
like
if you're
that. Oh, that's a
interested,
little bit
with all of the
tricky.
different
That,
word
I need
families and the starting sounds.
That. Having a look. I fed him food in a vat. Vat. But he got really what? Fat. We went to see his friends. We might have a few rats in the class. Oh no, rats. On the way home, my tie went flat. Oh, this is a tricky one.
Now, I probably wouldn't use a book that had a two-letter starting at an early stage. I would only do that when the students are a bit further along.
That. Good work. When we got home, he said, I just need I might need one of those too, a pat. Pat. Cat was so sleepy he went under the mat. Fancy that.
Okay. We play with it. So that folder I showed you before, or the folder Lydia was using, in the beginning I'm just playing. I might hide the letters around the room. The kids can find them and bring them to me, and we'll see what words we make. I can do lots of different, again, games with it. And then if I'm focusing on a word family a week, by Thursday and Friday, I'm saying to them, okay, I want to make hat. Do I use C that says K or H that says H? And if they don't get it right, that's okay. I give them lots of praise and reinforcement, and we talk about it some more, and we do some more modelling. And so with all of those different word families, I tend to do one a week, and the aim is not for them to get it correct in the week. The aim is for them over time to learn to hear those sounds and that they're making a difference. Okay. So the final area of emergent reading is independent reading. So independent reading is a combination of shared reading and the opportunity to independently browse with books. Again, this is a little screenshot from Jules. So she's talking about Charlie choosing books to read, and that he is choosing the same books repeatedly. And that's exactly what we want to see, and we want to see students in charge of that choice. Now, students might sit there and browse through the book. They might just pick it up and put it down again. They might look at 3 pages. They might open it back to front and the wrong way round. And all of that is experiences learning how books work. They might prefer to read books on iPads. We want them to have the opportunities to go hands-on with books as much as possible. So we give them that opportunity to go hands-on. We're definitely going to provide different books in different formats. And this is where we do shared reading again. So Charlie has a tub of books that he can independently go hands-on with. Some of the students I work with, I will often begin by going to a charity shop and saying, I've got $20, how many books can I have for $20? Because some of the students I work with are pretty hard on the books in the beginning. And so, yes, I can laminate books, yes, I can make books up in different ways, but I want a range of books for them to go hands-on with, and I find librarians get angry with me if they come back in 10 pieces. So I will do everything I can to get a whole range of books that they can go hands-on with, and then they're also getting their shared reading time with me. All of that is part of this independent reading. So Jules has got in Charlie's box some books, some magazines. Charlie loves buses, and she's written a note here that the buses magazine took his fancy again, must laminate and make into a simple textbook. Providing books in different formats. Ashley, on the left, he's the first student with Angelman syndrome that I remember working with who stole my heart. So Ashley was just gorgeous. The problem that I had with Ashley was every time I read a book to him or anyone else read a book to him, he just wanted to gaze at us adoringly. We did everything we could to get him to try and look at the page. We had torches and lights, and we did everything we could to try and get him to look at the book, but he just wanted to look at us. And then one day I had a brainwave. There's some books by a company called Kiwa Media, and when they read on the screen, the words jump one at a time, and Ashley was hooked. Having those words jump as they were read out loud totally got his attention. Before that, you could give him a book on an iPad and he still wouldn't look at it. He was looking for you. This was just brilliant. Again, screenshot from the amazing Jules. She has made a book up in Pictello and she's also printed it out. And so Charlie can have access to it in 2 different formats. We want lots of different books. We want alphabet books, books with repeated lines, rhyming books, photo-based books, books with rhythm and music, experience-based books, wordless books, Tar Heel readers, and just books. Whatever you think your individuals will engage with and enjoy. You preferably want a book that you can read in one sitting. You don't want it to be too complex. If it's going to take you multiple sittings to read it, it's not, ideal. But yeah. And you just want to read books with enjoyment for adults, as Georgia was with Leanne. That's what we want happening. That's part of it. And that brings us back to shared reading, which is where we started. And so everything that we do in emergent literacy is about building both literacy and language and communication. All of it is around that. We read, we write, we talk about the alphabet, we play with sounds so we can build their phonological awareness and their understanding of the code of speech, and all of that is about building language and communication. Sometimes I have teachers say to me that literacy is not appropriate with a student because they are too early or too young or too something. There's a fabulous quote that I often use from the guy who founded the Centre for Literacy and Disability Studies, where he says no student is too anything to be able to read and write. One of the reasons that we do want every single student to be focusing on literacy and communication is because communication is a basic human right. Literacy fosters communication development, and communication development fosters literacy development. And literacy is the biggest life skill that we can give our students that will make the most difference to their post-school life. So I have a list of thank yous there, and we have some time for questions, I think. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you.
And at first, I was supposed to be in the other part with Kate Aaron, but since she was sick, I was here. And I'm so glad I came because I thought my son was too young. He's 4 years old, and he's definitely not too young. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And I love your earrings. They're absolutely beautiful.
Special for the day.
Yes, I noticed that. I have a question because my 4 years old, he loves reading. He loves books.
Awesome.
A lot, and he's really able to turn the page himself. And sometimes he's really patient, and we go each page and we listen. I love sharing reading.
Yes.
I just learned.
Yep.
And other times he just flips and goes everywhere.
Yep.
So I just let him go where he wants to go, or I need to, make him a little bit more focused.
It's great to have the opportunity to do both, for him to be independent and having some control. I would say you want both in your day. If I will often do a little bit of sabotage when a student just wants to flick and I feel like that's starting to happen too much. So I will do a bit of sabotage and I'll pull out a puppet, or I'll bring something else in, or we'll get a book on an iPad instead, or I will just do some level of sabotage. But so long as you've got both happening, that's great. I wouldn't worry too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I'm just curious about your view on when learning to read, whether it's worth focusing at the same time or one before the other on recognising words or the letters themselves, or both at the same time.
Okay.
There are different approaches.
Yep. The literacy world is on a constant pendulum, I think. The research for all children, so typically developing children and children with disabilities, actually says that there are a range of different literacy learners in our classroom. And some children need one approach and some children need another approach to help them to move to the next level. And that there's no definite right or wrong for any individual. In Australia this year, we had a pamphlet sent to every primary school principal at the beginning of the year that talked about the big 6, that there are 6 different things that need to happen. And so in the end, it's about assessing the individual and figuring out which of those things that they need. It could be that a student most needs word work. It could be that a student most needs phonics work. It could be that the thing that's holding them back is language. And so we need to do good assessment to figure out. Corey said earlier that her daughter, do you mind me saying, Lily Grace is freaking awesome. Corey said earlier that her daughter is now ticked off all the emergent literacy skills, so she's ready to move to conventional instruction. She's transitional, but yeah, she's ticked off all the emergent literacy understandings. So she's now a transitional literacy learner and she'll move to conventional instruction. She's going to get a bit of everything because that's what the evidence base says is actually best. We're going to cover, she says grandly, her team is going to cover every area of literacy and then do further assessment to figure out which ones Lily Grace might need extra support in to move along. So, yeah, it's highly controversial in the literacy world. There are people who believe it has to be this or it has to be that. What we actually know is best practice for classrooms is balanced assessment where every student gets everything so that all students can progress.
I actually have a question.
Yep.
So our daughter is 7 and she, like a lot of kids, I imagine, does not like being tested. So I had a conversation with her and I told her she was going to get tested and she needs to show everybody how smart she is. And so she actually got I think 25 out of 26 letters. And they said, well, she may have gotten 26, but I think we messed up the testing. So how do we then convince the teachers, because they just keep wanting to do the same testing over and over and over again, and I'd get pissed off with that. So I imagine she is.
Yeah.
How do we tell them, okay, let's move on to something else, and what do you recommend there?
Okay, so Karen Erickson from the Centre for Literacy and Disability Studies has 4 questions that you can use to talk about whether a student is ready to move to conventional instruction, which is the next level. Do they know most of the letters most of the time? Yes, for your daughter. Do they have a communication system? Yes. Do they engage with books during shared reading? Yep. Books of her choice, books of her interest, yep. And do they understand that print is made up of letters and words? How do you know? Yeah. So we do something like a concept of word assessment where even predictable chart writing where you have a sentence and you run your finger along and you say, let me know when I get to the next word. So I would do just an informal thing like that. If you can say yes to all 4 of those, then she's definitely ready for the next level. So I would be saying to them, okay, she's ticked off the emergent understandings, we need to move on to conventional instruction. So we're going to move to word level, we're going to do some phonics. Yeah. So I would use those 4 questions as a way to have a conversation with them. Yeah. Yeah, and they're on my website about 25 times, but yes. Do they know most of the letters most of the time? Do they have a communication system that they're using expressively? Do they understand that print is made up of letters and words? I've forgotten the 4th one. I haven't really. Most of the letters, most of the time. Do they engage with books in shared reading? Yeah. So we can do more in-depth testing, but they're the kind of 4 questions. If we've got those ticked, we're ready to move on to conventional instruction.
Hi, I have 2 boys. My youngest is 3 with Angelman syndrome, and his older brother is 5, and he's needing speech therapy also.
Mm-hmm.
So I see all these pictures, and they're like individual shared reading, but in real life I have like community or family shared reading.
Yep.
Do you have any tips for when, for example, if I'm reading, my 5-year-old, he will go at his speed, and he will try to take control of it. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, so I have that a lot in classrooms because I have lots of students at lots of different levels. And I think it's great when you do shared reading with a bigger group because you're getting different things. But I would just be saying it's his turn to pick this time, his turn to pick this time. We're going to read the book 3 times in this book. It's going to be your brother's turn to talk, and on the other pages we can talk. I would just set some guidelines like that for him, because you probably need to be doing shared reading, back at that chart that we looked at. You probably need to be at the simplest level maybe with your 3-year-old, and with your 5-year-old you're way down the chart, and so you want to be able to change to the different levels on the different pages. It's a lot for you to juggle, but you're awesome. Yes.
Okay, this will be our last question. So I'm thinking about the car chart and the question level.
Yes.
And so for Lily Grace, her expressive level really depends. And what I mean by that is if she's initiating a message, it's at a much higher level than responsiveness to a question, which we still don't see a lot of that in response to a question. So which expressive level would I choose in thinking about that chart for her? Because it's pretty stark, the contrast between her expressive levels.
And having had dinner with you last week, I saw some of that, so that makes it easier. I would actually probably do it at the 2 to 5 word level, because that's where she is with her expressive communication, where she's engaged and interested. Yes, she's 1 word mostly if she chooses to respond. If she's like, well, you are such a dag, I'm not responding on your topic. Yeah. But that is where her language level is at, because that's what we see in her expressive communication. So, yeah, that's where I would be. Thank you. No worries.
Okay, thank you so much, Jane. That was
My
really
pleasure.
fantastic, and even better in person than on YouTube.